Hello, this is Max from Spaceship Villain, playing the beginning of the ROM hack Parallel Worlds for Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Now I know I'm kind of late to the whole ROM hack thing at this point. Parallel Worlds came out a few years ago. It's been out since 2006, as the title screen says. So if you've already played it and formed your own opinions, that's fine. But I figure there are other players like myself who might not have really tried it out yet, or might not even know where to begin with it. So I wanted to do something a bit different with this video. This is just a small preview. It isn't going to be a full Let's Play or anything complete like that, just my first impressions as I play the game more or less blind. If you're not familiar with it, Parallel Worlds is a ROM hack of the Super Nintendo Zelda game. It has a reputation for being one of the better hacks out there. It uses the original game engine and sprites, so it looks and hopefully plays like the Zelda you remember from 1992, but with all new dungeon and overworld maps, a new story, and a lot of adjustments to the existing art. That's really the concept that got me so interested in ROM hacks. They're a great way to breathe new life into the old games you already know and love. I've also tried a handful of ROM hacks for Super Mario World and Super Metroid. I think the Super Nintendo classics really lend themselves well to this sort of transformation. I'm going into this one without knowing too much about it, and I'm hoping that in the best case scenario it really could be like playing one of my favorite games again for the very first time. I figured I would record my first attempt at it. This might be a good way to decide if I'm interested in playing further into the game, and might even help you decide as well if this is a ROM hack worth playing for yourself. So what we're seeing here in the prologue is almost a shot-for-shot recreation of what we saw early on in Link to the Past. There are definitely some changes, as with the Skeletal King here, and coming up we have what seems to be a palette-swapped version of the evil sorcerer Aghanim from the first game is now Lord King Dragor. The story, for what it is, it's pretty standard boilerplate fantasy. It runs pretty closely in parallel with the original Link to the Past. I'm not clear on what's happening here, if she is being killed, as the story seemed to imply, or if it's just banishing her to the Dark World equivalent that this game has. So with the prologue complete, we go back to the title screen, and this is one of those things I'm not sure about. You probably saw it earlier. It looks very glitchy. I don't know if that's just the version of the ROM that I got, or if it's supposed to look like that as the Parallel Worlds clash, I'm not sure. We input our name. I always go with Link in a Zelda game. I always go with the canonical name of a character in a Zelda, in a Final Fantasy, whatever it may be. So now with our character created, and next up in this cutscene, we are getting the first look at the in-game sprites and the changes that have been made to them. Immediately we can tell that Link has lost his pink hair that he sported in Link to the Past. That was always kind of an outlier for the series. He's pretty much always, I think, been depicted as blonde or a brunette or some sort of standardized hair color in the other games, but Link to the Past always was kind of odd that way. It was almost an anime sort of art style with the pink hair. Now when your uncle walks forward here, he has what appears to be the Deku shield from Ocarina of Time. I didn't get far enough into the game to know if that's true, if that is just a visual similarity, or if that turns out to be significant later on. Also, if you saw there, the telepathic block tells us we're on version 1.0 of the hack. I have since been informed that there are newer versions of the hack. I don't know why I was linked to this one, but hopefully it's not too out of date of information I'm presenting to you here. So as we leave the house for the first time, we walk around a little bit. It immediately looks pretty similar to Link to the Past. I mean, clearly it's a new overworld map. It's a new layout, but of similar elements. Again, we go north to follow our uncle and head towards our initial goal. So we have the village entrance, we have the different areas labeled, that's new. And we have the guards here, let's see what they have to say. Guards seem to have a little more information, a little more text to share with you in this version. That's kind of nice. So I'm one of those players who always tries to talk to everybody as much as he can in a game like this. The previous Zelda games, each character would have 1 or 2 lines of text to say to you, but that would pretty much be it. With these guards, it's interesting. They have a lot to talk about. They tell you about King Dragor, they tell you about Zelda and the other 6 maidens. They even acknowledge the guardhouse, which we look at on our map is that glowing X where we're headed to. So I know the guards said that we could get to the guardhouse by going north from the village. I decided to go to the right first. It looks like we're near the cemetery here. I was figuring we would get some exploration out of the way, maybe find a secret or 2 before we continued on with the goal. But as you'll see as we go forward, I ended up having some trouble finding out actually where I was supposed to be going, so I'm going to be doing a little backtracking. I'm going to try and edit some of that out when it gets to that point, so it's not too obtrusive. Because from the map, as we saw there, you really would think you could just go straight north here and, go right to the guardhouse, but the guards seem to block you off at pretty much every intersection you would need to get through. And it's strange because I wasn't sure at this point in the game even, but the wandering guards will damage you if you run into them, and sometimes they'll even attack and chase after you. And the stationary guards are perfectly happy to have a chat with you, just let you go about your business. Just sort of an odd thing. I couldn't quite figure out who the enemies were at this stage in the game. As we get into the town here, I was just trying to go north. I was trying to figure out the way we have to go to get through to the guardhouse. I wasn't really trying to explore the individual houses or shops, but I pretty quickly found that I ran out of options. Now, what we see here, I hate the collision detection in this game, because I was trying to go up through the entrance of that wide open cave mouth, but it was blocking me because I apparently wasn't perfectly centered on that area. That cave is where you ultimately need to go to continue through to the guardhouse, but it's okay I got turned around right now. We're still just kind of exploring the town and the different areas. I got stuck here for a minute trying to sneak around the guard to see if I could walk past him in that space to the left or the right, but ended up just triggering his talk dialogue a couple of times. And with this guy as well, I tried talking to the different guards just to see if maybe this one would have something to say about the house he was guarding, or just any sort of different information, but it seems like they all have the same couple of conversation points for you. It's interesting exploring this early into the game because I still don't know what's been changed or what hasn't for this ROM. I try to pick up the rocks a couple of different times because I noticed there are the 2 different color rocks. I don't know if that's the same as it was in Link to the Past and these are just different graphics, or I don't know if maybe the author of this ROM hack had put in some boulders that we could lift even without the power gloves. So I'm trying a lot of things which might look kind of counterintuitive, but there is some reasoning behind it. So in this room we receive some arrows and some bombs. Arrows we can't do much yet with, but at least with the bombs we have some offensive capabilities. We haven't received the sword or the shield yet, but we can throw bushes, we can plant bombs, so that's something. And here jumping into the water just, I guess, to make sure that it does work the same way as I'm expecting from Link to the Past. Like I said with the boulders, I don't know what this game changed or what it didn't, so I'm just kind of establishing what the operational parameters are at this point. So coming back around, we can see what I think is the only house in the village that we haven't been into yet, so let's take a look. And I think we recognize that kid. He was the one who gave us the bug-catching net in Link to the Past. Here he seems to be asking us about a bottle, so I guess that's something we can come back for later. And what I'm doing here, I'm pulling on the painting because I remember there was one painting in one house in Link to the Past that, for whatever reason, would give you 20 rupees if you pulled it like that. So I remember we spent a lot of time in that room, coming and going would reset it, and you could get a lot of money that way, and that was kind of the only way we knew to afford all of the potions that we needed for healing. Now, I should clarify where I'm saying we, is because when I first played Link to the Past back in 1992 or 93, it was my brother and I who played the game together. We would do a lot of games that way because we both owned the console, we shared time on it, and it was a nice way to collaboratively go through even a single-player game like this. So we would trade off controls. One person would be actively playing and the other person would be supporting. That would mean maybe looking up questions in Nintendo Power, looking up maps, or just generally they would be the person who would help you think of where to go next. And it was just a really nice way to spend time together. I have a lot of fond memories from back when we used to do that, and as it turns out, I really could have used his help on something like Parallel Worlds. So it's pretty clear that I have no real idea where I'm supposed to be going now, but I'm thinking we've probably exhausted our options for going straight north through the town. So I'm going to start exploring the caves and little hidden areas like this. And we found a piece of heart. This doesn't end up being where we need to go ultimately, so I'm going to skip the portion of backtracking out of this area and we'll go to the south portion of town just to see if there's anything I missed down here. I've got some logs. It looks like I should be able to fit under there, but I guess not. So let's see what's over this way. And oh, got a staircase here. Let's see what is down that. So we've got one of the fortune tellers here. I definitely remember these guys from the original game, but we tended never to really visit them. I mean, because like I was saying, we like to figure things out on our own, and we had Nintendo Power when all else failed. The fortune teller's advice always seemed so cryptic. I felt like if you knew what they were talking about, then you should kind of already know what you're supposed to be doing. So just about the only time we would visit them was when we were really low on health. That was pretty often the quickest way to get a full refill if you didn't happen to be near a fairy fountain. That one didn't have too much to tell us anyway. It doesn't seem like we missed anything. He said he had a temporary condition where he couldn't tell fortunes, and we should come back another time. That could be because of the point of the game we're at. We have to trigger some cutscenes and some story events before we could get a good fortune, but most likely I think that's just because we're so low on rupees. That was a polite way to get us out of his store. So going into the next area, we see the label is Church Path. So it looks like the church is located in a different spot from where it was in Link to the Past. It looks like we're in what was the Eastern Palace. And from that map, it doesn't look like we're really on the right path towards getting to the guardhouse. But since I don't know where we're supposed to be going next, this is another large area to see, something we haven't explored yet, so we'll give it a look. Inside the church, the layout is pretty similar, but you've got some interesting differences there with the warp tiles up in the top corners. And in the other corners of the map, you have some raised platforms. One empty treasure chest, and one that contains something similar to what we got in the church in the original Link to the Past, a full heart container, which is very nice. It's interesting, the first place I remember noticing it was in the church there, but throughout Parallel Worlds you come across areas that have these opened treasure chests. That seemed really odd to me, but it's something I noticed a lot of in this playthrough. Came back into the church just before we leave this area. I wanted to make sure that we had explored everything we need to. I remembered that ornamental panel being pretty important from the original game. That was how you get into the sanctuary from the sewer. I was thinking since we were at this area already, maybe Parallel Worlds worked differently and we were supposed to get into the sewer from the sanctuary by pushing that panel. It was just an idea, it didn't turn out to be the case, but it was worth trying before we left here. Crossing back through the village cemetery, I realize there's an area we haven't seen yet. I'm almost on the right track, but then I get scared off by the guard in pursuit. I realize now, of course, I could have survived the hit, or probably even just outrun him, but at this point in the game, I didn't have any weapons, just wanted to avoid conflicts. So instead, we're going back towards the town and then to the south. My plan for this next area, my thinking is that maybe there was something I was supposed to grab from the house before I left. Maybe I didn't explore that thoroughly enough. So we're going to head back in that direction and just see if there's anything we can do there. Get hung up on the collision detection again, but just sort of wandering around. See, there is a path, something going off to the west, so we'll take a look at that in a minute. We just want to see the interior of the house again first. So immediately I notice what could be a bombable wall. Not sure, I'm not expecting that to work, but it looked like it might have been something, so we'll give it a try. So we'll go back towards that path now and see what lies one screen to the west. So we're on Vanilla Beach. Now, looking at the map, I know we're in the wrong area. I see there is a cave entrance, but I can't imagine that that cave stretches long enough to bring us anywhere near the guardhouse. So we're just gonna skip that for now. But hey, here's a cave here I hadn't explored yet. Let's see what's in there. And it doesn't look like we can really do much of anything with this space, so keep it in mind for future reference, I guess. I don't know how all of these caves are going to end up connecting, but it helps to have seen a screen before, and then maybe when you encounter it again, you can make that mental connection and remember where you had found it earlier. Walking back up north, and something catches my eye. I see a cave entrance down in that pool, something I hadn't noticed before. I'm guessing because there's the shallow water, we end up getting into there by warping in from the same location in the Dark World, but just to make sure before I continue on, walk around and see that there are no gaps in that wall, nowhere we could fall down through. So again, it's not where we're going now, but something interesting to keep in mind for, I'm sure we'll be coming back to that area later. And speaking of coming back to an area later, we are back in the town now because I know that there is something I've missed. And if you've played Parallel Worlds, you know I'm standing right there. It's staring me in the face, but I still don't realize it. So at this point, I'm going to skip over some more of the backtracking and fast forward us to some more productive exploration. So going back to that area south of the church, sneaking around the guards, and we see a cave. Cave is just about the only word we have to go on at this point, so let's take a look and see what's inside. And again, if you know Parallel Worlds, you'll know that this is exactly the spot where my own playthrough really went off the rails. So I see the Armos Knight here, and I establish that it can hit me, and that, to me, means that I should leave. It turns out that actually that is where you're supposed to be going at this point in the game. You're not supposed to fight the Armos Knight, you're just supposed to work your way around him and avoid him, get past him to get the lamp, and the lamp is what you use to light the darkened cave. But I haven't even found the darkened cave yet, so I don't know that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So it's embarrassing. I did fail on the very first puzzle that this mod has to offer. But in my defense, it's a challenge mod, and that was a pretty good bit of misdirection. Because in my mind, when I see the Armos Knight, that means I need the bow and arrow, because that's how you defeat him in the first game. Since I don't have the bow and arrow, since I don't even have a sword yet, that clearly indicates to me that I'm just not ready for this portion of the cave, and I need to come back here when I'm equipped to fight him. I know, it's a pretty weak excuse, but I'm just explaining my thought process and why this mod is maybe not the greatest fit for me. Having missed the actual next place I'm supposed to be going, this playthrough is more or less dead in the water. I became convinced for a while that what I was supposed to be doing was finding an underground passage beneath a bush, the same way that you gain entrance to the castle in the original Link to the Past. So I wasted some time testing this theory by picking up every bush in the town, but we can skip most of that. I eventually found my way into the cave where I was supposed to be headed, and that's where I made my next major mistake. As you can see, the cave is pitch black. I convinced myself that this mod was so difficult that they must expect you to just find your way through these darkened maps, instead of remembering that the original game had a lamp, and that this game probably would too. Not a very proud moment, but I persisted for a while. I started laying these bombs and using them to track my relative motion on the screen. And sometimes it worked. Sometimes I could get through to another room. But of course that's not the way you're supposed to go through, so eventually I just got so lost that I had to use my last few bombs to surrender. So that's about the end of my experience with Parallel Worlds. I did go back and do a quick recording of what it should have looked like going into the cave with the lamp, but didn't really get much further. So if you came to this video for a review, I can only give a quick assessment of the parts I saw. Parallel Worlds is clearly a well put together ROM hack. It changes a lot of what you know about Link to the Past and really gives you a new experience with that game. But it's not for everyone, and while I'm particularly bad at hard games, I think this one is severe enough to give just about anyone a challenge. The consensus seems to be that you'll probably need a walkthrough by your side regardless, so it's up to you to decide whether you enjoy playing a game that way or not. Hopefully this video gave you a basic idea of what to expect, and some insight into my thoughts as another first-time player. I've never really done Let's Play style videos before, so let me know if you like this format. I tried to keep things interesting and trim out some of the backtracking. I don't know if I'll ever attempt this approach on a long play or not, but let me know if there are any other first impressions you'd be interested in seeing. This has been Max from Spaceship Villain. Thanks for watching.